Good day. This is my reflections on the baptism of Christ. It's the festival that comes along at this time of the year. It's part of the Epiphany revelations, one thing being shown after another after another. It's a while since I was baptized by the Reverend Asa Biaru in Uganda, the country of my birth. I have to admit I don't actually remember a thing. I guess that would be what most of you who read this hear, and that's how it is for most of us baptized as children. We're all a bit forgetful. The baptism of Christ was a less Anglican affair. Anglican clergy usually have to hoist up the rather large sleeves of our robes. We have to worry about the transfer of the baby from mother, best bet, or godmother, second best bet, or godfather, high risk transfer. And then we have to move fast as the baby has realized that she or he is not now with a known person. I think babies are equipped with sensors to detect strangers, or maybe just clergy. Now, quickly, while not dropping our service book, we swoosh the baby down towards the carefully warmed water. Babies with their heads lower than everything else have a "what's up" moment. That's when they suddenly become still and silent, perhaps drawing a breath for a loud scream. And this is our moment. 3 scoops of water in quick succession. Words get said. The next move, righting the baby to normal posture upwards, gives the child another moment of quiet to reassess the situation, during which the priest signs the child with a cross in the name of the Trinity. Then the baby, all signed and damp with holy water, is returned to a parent. You can feel the tension in the church decrease, or maybe it's just the clergy tension that is falling. Infant baptism, which is how most of us got baptized, was a late development in the early church. Baptism was a decision for an adult after a long period of teaching called catechesis and participation in the church's life. The non-baptized were excluded from communion, for instance. Baptism was like changing citizenship. It was an adult decision to make the church your first and biggest commitment, the community in which you lived. Baptism was and still is a statement of stepping from one world into another. It is crossing a bridge, it's a border, it's going over a line in the sand, it's a decision to change who you are. These are adult choices. Returning to my distant past, every few years the British colonial service brought our family home to England for a 3-month break. We travelled by sea up the east coast of Africa, through the Suez Canal and west along the Mediterranean Sea. There were frequent stops at port cities on the European coast. My memory was of the distance between the dock and the boat. The boat would be tied up, but looking down, there was a big gap. I would guess about 50 feet was the drop, and the gap and the drop were traversed by a gangplank suspended by ropes, wobbly beyond belief, and with dark waters sloshing around between the boat and the shore. And there were twists and turns in this gangplank. It zigzagged down, and you had to balance and watch your feet. Leaving the ship to go ashore required a good deal of courage and a good reason to risk yourself. I think we only did it 2 or 3 times. Hardly anyone goes by boat now. Flying is our normal passage across the deep waters. But there is still, for me, an old fear attached to this. It is arrivals that I dislike. Silently, passengers who have been shoved as close together as twins in a womb exit the aircraft with a barely suppressed claustrophobia, and we burst out into the series of endless hallways before customs and passport checks, and then the near eternal wait for luggage to be disgorged onto the moving belt. All this is stressful enough, but then the walk that takes you out into Canadian air. The last need for courage is to scan the crowd of upturned faces to see if a face turns to you. Is there anyone here who loves you? Is there anyone here who has come to find you, to pick you up, to take you home, to hug you? Home, the place you suddenly long for. Watch the opening and closing scenes in the movie Love Actually, filmed in an airport, if this doesn't echo your own experiences. The baptism of Christ, it seems to me, is closest to these experiences of transition, border crossing waters, from one dry place to be left behind to another, better place that is your desired destination. The Genesis reading tells a mythic tale of deep, watery endlessness cloaked in darkness. Wind blows across it. It is the wave-breathing body of the ocean in darkness. It is where we do not belong. Into this light, very gradually but increasingly, begins to shine. A dawn when hope of dawn has been lost or forgotten or never even imagined. Now changes are given forward movement. Hope and faith can breathe too. Imaginings, things worth trying out, all comes to light. John's baptism always makes me think of the gangplank. John was no clean-cut priest in long-sleeved robe. He wasn't dealing with babies. His preaching called out of people something that, like the first dawn over the dark waters, they didn't know could be, that they hadn't even imagined as thinkable. John offered them a freedom from a world in which everything that you ever did wrong or failed to do, every judgment was held against you, every failure to do the right thing, every cowardice, jealousy, theft, cruelty, neglect, or shame registered in a dark book. John said, "Come to me. Walk into the deep water where I am. Do this in front of everybody. Bring your broken, aching, shamed, and guilty heart, and I will drown it under this water. All your wrongs I will wash away as you are about to drown. I will wash it away like the sweat in your clothing and the dust in your hair. I will hold you down until your breath is gone and you are about out. And then, with the strength of God's arm, I will pull you up, and you will gasp and blink in the sunlight. You will cough and splutter like a newborn child, and you will find yourself held in love. A new life, lived in the daylight of God's presence, is here for you to be born into. Come to me." I think John believed that everyone was capable of goodness, even holiness. He had no standards. He would have baptized anyone who came with honest intent. Freedom from guilt and shame he offered. He offered to take the load so that the people could live again in joy before God. When Jesus, smiling at his cousin, walked over into the water towards him, John was momentarily foxed. "You don't need this cleansing," he said. But Jesus was looking for what was beyond forgiveness. He was ready for the new life. There are rules about how to live not being bad. Don't steal, murder, etc., etc. Jesus wanted the wind of the Spirit to fill his heart so he could live, not thinking of avoiding sin, but thinking of living for God. When Jesus came up from John's big-handed "down you go," He surfaced with the sun spluttering, blinking, smiling, and rejoicing. Jesus was off the gangplank. He was off someone else's ship. He was looking up, not down. He was not anymore the old covenant that gave you the don't do that rules. It was God saying, step forwards from me and I will hold you. Step forwards from me and I will hold you. I will catch you. I will fill your heart with joy. It was God's new deal now becoming real. The Reverend Asa Biaru didn't drop me or drown me. He poured water over me to wash me, so I'd know I could be washed again and again, as often as I needed. As often as I needed to be washed clean. Maybe he was good with babies and held on to me for a while. I hope so. He gave me a little key to the door of life, the door I found in my late teens. May all who met him be blessed. You and I travel over the deep, rolling oceans of death, both in boats and in life. If you have been baptized in some profound way, you have already faced drowning and been saved. The second baptism, that of the Spirit, lifts you up from the water and from the solid ground and invites you to live not because of what you fear, but to live upwards into what is worthy of love. You can always renew your baptismal vows. Just ask a priest. Happy baptism. Happy festival of the baptism of Christ.